Alright, the road to 2200 rapid continues. And, okay, we have a French defense. Alright, I'm going to go for d4. Now, I normally play b3 on move 2 against the French. But I've been toying with take c4, the Monte Carlo, which is kind of like a Caro-Kann Panov. Um, and it seems harder to me, the Monte Carlo, than the Panov, but that might just be because, I mean, when I search it up on YouTube, I literally can't find videos on the Monte Carlo. I can't find anything, so I don't know if I'm not looking in the right places. But I find that this, in a similar way to how the Panov attack takes Caro-Kann players out of their comfort zone, I feel like the Monte Carlo achieves a similar thing. Where, you know, in both the Caro-Kann and the French, black is going for like a really strong light squared center, right? And in both the Panov and the Monte Carlo, I mean, white plays the exact same moves, right? It's only black that's playing different pawn moves. We just launch the pawns at the light squared center immediately. It's the exact same concept. So, okay, let me see if I can remember what we're supposed to do. So, normally c6 isn't played, actually. Normally knight f6 is played, but I don't think there's a problem with c6 at all. I really like playing c5 in these lines, but, I mean, we can't really go for it yet. It feels a bit premature. But I really like c5, because I feel like I can try to suffocate the black position. And, I mean, if my opponent's going to let me play it with tempo, then I'm going to play it. The reason I don't like knight c3 is because of bishop to b4, and I always seem to struggle against that. So if anybody has any experience playing the Monte Carlo, please let me know some of the things that I'm talking about, whether I'm correct or not in some of my assumptions, which I am aware are assumptions. But I think it's an interesting system because black kind of has these bishops pointed at my king, because I'm going to castle kingside, and I'll have my bishops pointed at black's king, and it seems to be conducive to quite an interesting position. Bishop g5 looks very strong to me, because black can't block with his dark squared bishop. And I mean, f6 doesn't look like a particularly fun move to play, which he does go for. Okay, he goes knight to e7. Knight f5 looks reasonable. We could go bishop to g3 preemptively, offering a trade of dark squared bishops, so we don't have to trade off for the knight, which looks viable. If bishop d3, knight f5, I mean, I don't want to take it. And if bishop g3, if take, I mean, we get the open h file. That can't be bad. Yeah, that's got to be all right. And if knight g6, I mean, we could take it, but I don't really want to, because black hasn't committed to castling kingside yet, so he just open up his rook. So if knight g6, I probably just go bishop g3, although maybe knight f4 is quite interesting there. Take, castle, yeah, that's probably alright. Okay, bishop f5, surprising move, I think. We could castle, we could also play knight c3. We could also play knight bd2. Both moves look reasonable. I think I prefer knight c3, though. But a simple reason that I think that clearly the action is going to happen on the king's side. And although that might mean that knight bd2 is the natural move, because it brings the knight closer to the king's side, I think it's just going to trip over this knight, and I'd have to go like via f1, which is a typical idea in openings like the Ruy Lopez or the Italian, I believe. But I think going from c3 to e2 is actually, to me, an easier way to get into the game, into some more juicy squares, namely f4. Okay, so my opponent castles. I think we can go ahead and castle. Taking makes no sense to me because we invite knight takes and bishop g3, knight takes, pawn takes. And in that position, I'm not as impressed with my open h file because I don't have the bishop and the rook converging on h7. We could go queen c2, inviting my opponent to take, although he could go queen d7 defending the bishop further, although maybe that limits the development of the knight. Although he could play bishop d3, queen d3, and knight to f5, because the queen would be defending the knight. So maybe I shouldn't encourage that. Yeah, I think I'm just going to castle, and if queen to d7, preparing take, knight f5, supported by the queen. If queen d7, I think probably bishop to g3. And I think structurally, we have to be better. One, because we have this c5 pawn, right? Which is kind of suffocating the black position. And it's very hard for him to get rid of it, because, I mean, b6, we can probably go b4, and a5, well, we have b5, but we also have a3. b5, by the way, this structure is quite typical of, like, a Slav defense, which is what I play with the black pieces. And often what I notice when I do play that is after b6, b4, a5, a lot of people don't go a3, but instead go b5 and try to really break open the position, which is quite interesting. But okay, bishop to g4. Well, I mean, I don't see a reason not to contest the bishop. If you want to take, then that's brilliant. So I assume he will retreat. Which also gives me a monopoly over the f5. Well, not a monopoly, but it means that I can stop knight to f5, because the bishop isn't supporting that square anymore. Although, of course, if we move our queen, we'll lose the knight. Although, can we go queen c2? And get away with it? Because if take, maybe we have take. The thing is, though, even if after queen c2, black plays, I don't know, pawn h6, we still have the issue of the knight, which doesn't have an easy square to go to. I mean, d2 is very passive, I think. So, g4 feels like an overextension. If bishop g3, offering this trade, we open the f-file. g4 is less committal because we have a pawn on g2 still. We also control f5 if we get g4 in. And I mean, our bishop isn't really doing anything over here anyway. So yeah, let's go bishop g3. That looks natural to me. And sorry, what I was saying before is I think structurally we have to be better. Namely because of the c5 pawn. But also, I mean, the pawn on f6 is a bit weird. Which is why I played bishop g5 in the first place. We do have to be slightly careful of the e3 square. Okay. Queen there. I mean, queen e1 defends and potentially threatens to invade the position. I like g4, though. Okay, bishop to g6. Knight h4 looks quite interesting. Although, I don't really want the queen coming to g3, so maybe I should go queen e1. Not yet, because my bishop would be hanging. Although maybe knight e2 is now the idea, which I mentioned earlier. Right? That was the whole point of putting the knight on c3, is to bring it to e2, where it does actually cover g3 and f4. So something like knight e2... I mean, if f5, g5 looks interesting. And we can potentially whack a knight on f4. Also, you give away the e5 square. So yeah, no, f5 would be horrific. At least for the time being. No, I want to put the other rook on e1, because rooks on the f and e files would be amazing. So maybe knight e2. Yeah, I like that. I like that. And if take, then I will happily take, of course. I can take black, but I mean, I'm in no rush. Okay, knight d7. Alright. Now maybe we take. Take. Queen d2. Rook e8, rook e1. Again, I feel like we should be better. We could go knight to h4, trying to force black to take us on d3. Ooh, that looks really interesting. Knight h4. Oh, I love that move. Yes, please. That's great. So, the reason I like this move so much is, one, we're opening up our rook on the f-file. Two, we are effectively forcing black to take, because if black plays a move like rook a to e8, I don't think this is the best trade for him. Or I could even go knight to f4, which would threaten to win a pawn. And then, I mean, my knights are converging on the light squares in the black camp, like e6, like g6, like f5, like h5, and that looks very scary. So he does take. We are still covering the dark squares, and we have knight to f5 whenever we want it. Yeah, this looks crushing. This is kind of a positional squeeze, I think, which is kind of the way that I like to play the Caro-Kann Panov, which, like I said, this Monte Carlo French, to me, has a lot of similarities to. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And, okay, how do we want to continue? Well, our queen is now defending g3, so this knight doesn't necessarily have to perform that job. So we could put the knight on f4. We could also put the knight on g3, which would mean that we are going to put a knight on the f5 square. If g6 is played, I mean, that's incredibly weakening. And we have probably have sacrifices in the future. We could play it slightly slower with rook a to e1, which, I mean, can't be a bad move, can it? Yeah, the black position looks a bit... If b6, just b4. If a5, a3. And he can open up the queen side a bit, but I feel like his problems on the king side will only exacerbate, and I don't think he has time to actually form meaningful counterplay on the king side. It's also very hard for him to access the e4 square, which would be like the main point of infiltration, right? Because it's supported by the pawn, and I can't attack it with a pawn. But he doesn't have access to d6, he doesn't have access to c5, he doesn't have access to f6 because a pawn is in the way, and he doesn't have access to g5. So we can't actually put a knight there, which is super, super helpful for us. Okay, so knight g3 looks good, knight f4 looks good, rook a to e1 looks good. Maybe it doesn't really matter. I don't like knight to f5 because I don't want to make trades unnecessarily just yet. This knight is terrible anyway. It can't move. I'm going to say rook a to e1. It feels like the more flexible option. Feels more flexible. I'm not concerned about queen a5. I mean, just a3 threatens b4, and our queen defends a3, so that's not an issue. The queen probably needs to be helping in the center and the king side, because if he moves too many pieces over to the queen side, there will be some kind of sacrifice, I think. I mean, g5 is always a threat as well, trying to open up the f-file. Potentially. This is very interesting. Because, like, in theory, us having the double pawns on the king side should be bad. But I actually think it's a massive bonus, because it opens up the f-file and means that we control f5 so well. Okay. Knight f8. That makes me want to play knight f4 to stop the knight coming to g6 and also control the e6 square. Basically to try to suffocate the black position. Does it matter if he gets a knight to g6? Does it matter? I think it does. Because then he can open up the e-file for his rook, and he can maybe go after the f4 square. So I'm going to go knight f4. We can maybe even... No. Oh, wait, am I blundering? Oh, have I blundered? No. No, knight e6. Knight e6, knight f5. That's crushing. Wait. No, sorry. The knight controls e6. g5, knight e6, rook e6. It's not over. Wait a minute. That's a silly, silly move from me, but... Wait, what about this? Maybe knight h5 is the win. Because I have to take with check. King h8. The knight does defend the h7 square, so we don't have checkmate. Knight takes, rook takes. Rook f7? Is the black position just frozen? Queen d7. Rook f1. You can't move this knight because I take here. If king to g8 defending the knight. Okay, we have options. We don't need to panic. We have options. Yeah, knight e6 isn't going to work. Rook e7 is an interesting move. Idea being that you have to take back, so rook takes. Knight f5 attacking the rook. Or then maybe you can just take the knight, actually. Yeah, you can ignore it. So, okay, let's go knight h5. Is there an argument to be made for not playing knight f6? Is there an argument for rook f6? Well, does that carry a threat? Can black just play knight g6, offering a rook trade? I think so. So we should probably take with the knight. King h8. Can we sack? Knight h7, knight h7, rook f7. Knight g5. Yeah. Knight e8, rook e8. Can we prepare it, though? Well, if we move our queen, then this knight can move, though. Because then it doesn't have to defend h7. So let's say we play a move like queen e3. Well, then knight g6. Queen h6. If the king comes here, we can't... Wait, maybe we can't give a check. Should we take the rook or not? That's the question. Should we take the rook or not? Knight e8, rook e8. We have a rook for 2 knights, and black has damaged structure. Maybe queen f3, queen f7 is the way to go. That's interesting. Knight e8, rook e8, queen f7, queen d7, defending the rook. Queen f6 check. King g8, queen f7 check. King h8. I think we can go into a winning endgame there. After rook e7, queen e7, queen e7, rook e7, rook f8, king g7. That endgame has to be good. And something like rook b8, maybe. Because if rook e2, we take on b7 with check. I think that's the way to go. So, yeah, I did completely blunder the move g5, but because we had so much pressure anyway, I felt like we could still play this. Now, I'm relying on the fact that the black position is pretty frozen. For example, this queen has very limited movement, because if the queen isn't defending the knight anymore, I can play take, take, and take, right? The knight can't move because the rook hangs. If this knight moves, I mean, does it even help? Well, no, because if knight g6, then queen f6, king g8, queen f7, and I pick up the rook. So black has very limited options. Very limited options. His position is very suffocated, which is kind of the idea, to me, of this c5 move early on. It kind of set the tone for the game. It suits my playstyle as well, like a sort of positional pressure, squeezing sort of playstyle. But, you know, it's different for everybody, the way that you prefer to play chess. If you want an open board with tactics flying everywhere, well, this probably isn't the system for you. Maybe I'm not playing the system right anyway. That looks like a terrible move. You're stopping queen f6, yes, but... Sorry, I was trying to see if I could play here, and mate, but the knight covers. But what do you do against queen f7? Is this not a simple double attack? If rook f8, I just take on e7. Maybe... Oh, queen d8. Wow. Does this hold? What a move. What? That's a really, really nice idea. To just... Okay. Okay. Can I go rook e6, rook h6? Can I get away with that? Well, if rook e6, what do I do against rook f8? Well, I just take. Wait, the black pieces still can't move, though. They still can't move. Because this knight has no safe squares, other than b8. Everything else... Well, I mean, you can go back to f8, but then I give a check, maybe. This knight can't move because the rook hangs. The rook can't move because the knight hangs. The queen can't move because the rook hangs, or the knight hangs. The king obviously has no moves. So can't black just not move? I mean, theoretically, this knight can, but where's it going to go? The pawns are constricting its movement completely. Okay, so if I go rook e6, what can black play? If knight f8, knight to f8. Rook d6? I don't know. What if I just double up on the e-file? What if I literally just go rook e2 and rook e1? If here, I take. If rook e2, how do you stop it? Maybe knight f8 trying to go knight g6 to defend the knight? Can I punish knight f8? I give a check, king g8. Maybe I can go rook f5. Because if take, then I win. And rook f5, rook here. Or even this. I think rook f5 is the way to go. Because I need the rook on e1 to keep pressure on the e-file. If rook f5, rook f8, I just take on e7 all the same. Here, this is a crucial moment, which is why I'm taking so long. Even with time pressure, I've got 10-second increment. If you take, I take on e8. If you go rook f8, I take on e7. If you go knight f8... Wait, rook g5, knight g6... Rook h5... Knight g8... Maybe I can go rook e6? I think rook f5 is the way to go. I don't think black can really move. This is the only piece that can move. Nothing else can move. The king can't move, the queen can't move, the rook can't move, the knight can't move. The knight on d7 is the only piece that can move, right? Black has no good pawn breaks. If b6, I can go b4, or I could ignore it. Either is probably fine. I also have g5, g6. If I need it. Okay, it does go back there. So here. What was my plan? Yeah, rook g5. Rook g5. If this, then I take. Wait, yeah, because if queen takes, you just lose. And then go here, which forces you back. Because if you don't go back, you get mated. There's no other way to defend. And then, can I go rook e to e5 and rook g5? Threatening rook g7. Or even here, here, here. Rook e6, if you take, I mate you. If you move the knight, I take the rook. Queen d7. Rook e to h6. I think that wins. I could probably also go for this, but I was thinking he could block on g6 if I do that, because the rook wouldn't be pressuring the other rook anymore, because it'd be on the h-file, and maybe black can unravel there. Yeah, I think maybe he can. So if queen d7, rook h6, knight g6, rook takes, knight takes, rook takes is mate. If I take with the queen, then the queen can take back, but if I take with the rook, then his queen is blocked from defending. I think this is a win. Honestly, we don't get any normal games, do we? We don't get any normal games at all. It's always got to be some insane, like, endgame or insane tactical position, or I have to blunder something and then fight back. That's just how it goes, though. I think this has to win. What else can he do? I'm threatening rook h7, knight h7, rook h7. He can't defend. He has no checks. 0 checks. My king is completely safe. And yeah, moving the knight here doesn't work, because I'm not going to take with the queen, I'm going to take with the rook. That's the key idea. And after rook takes, knight takes, I take with the rook, not the queen. Yeah, and this doesn't help the cause. Wow. What a game. What a game. I will be so interested to know whether this position is, like, what the evaluation of this position is, right? Like, was there a way for black to hold, well, to win this, or hold this, or was g5 actually a blunder? Don't get me wrong. I blundered this fork. I completely forgot this forked my pieces, right? I'm not saying this was some brilliance on my part, but was the black king just way too weak to play g5? Let's see what the engine has to say. Oh, wow. 93.9% accuracy for us. That's pretty good considering I don't really know the opening. I've got to say. 80.6 for our opponent. I think g5 was the game-losing move, you know. Anyway, so normally against the French, I play this b3 gambit line, which I've played over the board many times. I have a playlist on my channel for this line, and I have some good success with it. But as I'm getting higher elo, more and more people are dealing with it in the correct manner. So I'm trying out this Monte Carlo c4, which the engine initially says is like slightly better for black, right? c6 is inaccurate, apparently. So I normally see something like knight f6. And previously, I was playing knight c3, bishop b4, queen b3, I think I was playing. And I was getting some very bad positions, I've got to say. So I'm trying to delay this knight c3 move. The engine likes bishop d3. It also likes knight c3, but bishop d3. And if knight f6, knight c3, bishop c4, sorry, bishop b4. Yeah, see, I think I prefer knight f3, though. And on bishop b4. Knight c3. Castles, castles. dc4, bishop c4. I'm not sure what to make of these positions, and I'm also not sure what to make of bishop g4, and whether we need to throw in h3 or not. I don't know. But okay, knight f3, bishop d6, pawn c5, bishop c7, bishop g5. Engine doesn't love bishop g5. It prefers bishop d3. I didn't like that on account of bishop g4. The engine doesn't think it's a problem, though. Knight e7, rook e1, let's say castles. Oh, okay, we have these ideas. Okay, and if the knight goes to f6, then I mean we just pin it, right? Or, oh no, rook e1's an issue. Ah, because the bishop isn't on this diagonal anymore. Okay, bishop g5, f6 is the best move. Bishop h4. Engine doesn't love bishop h4, but only on account of knight h6. Which feels unnatural. Knight e7 feels more natural. But okay, bishop d3, bishop f5, knight c3. I thought taking was bad. Because if bishop g3... I mean, you can take. You can also play this weird bishop a5 move, apparently, followed by queen e7, and if queen e2, h5. I don't know. But okay, knight c3, castles, castles, bishop g4, pawn h3. Engine prefers bishop g3, and if take, h takes. I suppose this doesn't matter anymore because it doesn't ruin the structure. So let's say knight d7, queen c2. If you take, well, that's not an issue. King comes to g2. Pawn maybe goes to f4 or even just stays on f3 to monitor the e4 square. And we have the open h file if we want it. This is very good. So pawn h3, though. Bishop h5, bishop g3. And I thought this trade was very good for us. And it is. It is really good for us. Queen c7. Pawn g4. Engine doesn't love it. It prefers knight e2. And if knight d7, knight f4. Ah, the pawn supports the knight. Interesting. And we're going to kick this bishop out anyway. I thought I wanted to stop f5. That was my thing. I was like, well, can't pawn f5 be played? Here. Ah, I'm converging on e6. That's the problem. Okay. Pawn g4. Bishop g6. We're still better. Knight e2. Engine prefers rook e1. Which was a move I considered, but I thought it was ridiculous. Because I was like, well, this rook wants to come to e1. I thought I thought queen c2 was unnecessary. And the engine agrees. Knight e2. It's still a decent move, though. I mean, rook e1. Can't the queen come to g3, though? Oh, sorry, no, e7 hangs. Oh, so we're defending by proxy. We're defending by proxy. And if take, knight g6... Oh, it wants to double up on the e-file. Aha. Okay, knight e2. We're still better. Knight h4 is the best move. Bishop d3, queen d3, rook fe8. Rook ae1 is best, although knight f4 is also good. Knight g3 is also good. As I kind of evaluated, all three of these moves looked fantastic, and they're all the same evaluation. They're all plus 0.9. So I went rook at e1 because it felt like the most flexible option. Knight f8. Knight f4 is inaccurate. Knight g3 is slightly better. I thought this was not that great because of knight g6. Knight hf5. I saw this, but I thought I was giving him the f5 square. So let's say knight f5, knight f5, knight f4. Oh, I'm coming to d6. Oh, of course. And I'm blocking this, and I'm winning the e-file. Oh, that's crushing. That's what I missed. That's what I missed. Okay. Knight f4. g5 loses the game. It's just a losing move because of knight h5 only move. Now, I was initially considering knight e6. I didn't think it was that good, though. Take. Gh4. And I was looking at rook f6, and this is losing. The only good move is queen e3, stopping the knight from moving, so I'd take. And also... Wait, what am I threatening? What's the threat? Let's just say black does nothing. What's the threat? Yeah, rook f6, but why is that a big deal? Oh, I think it's because of queen g5 and rook f7. Is it? Queen g5, rook f7, knight g6. Oh, queen f6. Okay. But yeah, it's not good enough because, I mean, if black takes, apparently it's good. But black can also just ignore it. Knight f8, rook f8, knight f5. I mean, this still looks winning to me. But apparently it's less winning. Okay, maybe not winning, but better. Knight h5 is winning, though, because after gh4, knight f6, king h8, knight e8 is the best move. So I was considering knight e3. Sorry, not knight e3, queen e3, which is also a decent move. But why did I reject this? I think rook ec8 is the best move. But I mean, that just loses the knight, obviously, so nobody would ever play that. I think it was because of knight g6. But I'm still going to take anyway. Yeah, and if queen here, knight here, I'm going to take anyway. So I'm going to take regardless. So I thought I might as well take straight away, which is the best move, and queen f3 is the best follow-up. Rook f7 is also playable. And if king g8, queen f3. Okay, but I thought queen f3 was better. Knight d7. I was initially calculating queen d7. That was what I assumed he was going to play, which is inaccurate because of queen f6, king g8, queen f7, king h8, and what was the follow-up? Rook e5, the engine likes. Rook f5 as well. It's the same thing I did, really, just in a different way. Because after all these moves, which we played the best moves every move, we get to the same thing, where these pieces are, well, I mean, if the queen's on d7, it doesn't change anything. The queen on d8 or d7 is the same thing. But the knight has to be on f8 to defend. I liked the move rook g5, because after knight g6, I can go rook h5. The engine believes it's inaccurate, because the engine says, oh, black can go knight eg6. And after rook e8, there's queen g5, which I saw, but I thought this was winning anyway. I thought this was winning. Queen f6, queen g7, queen d8, queen g8, and this is a winning endgame. And I saw something along these lines, and I thought this has to be winning. So I wasn't too concerned about that. But yeah, the engine does say that queen f6 is better. Queen f7. Rook fe5. Knight fg6. Oh, it's the same concept. It's the same concept. But rook g5 allows knight g6 winning the rook, whereas rook e5 forcing the knight to g6 because it has to defend the knight. In the game, obviously, the knight was blocking the rook's control of g7. But it's the same concept. Force the knight to g6 and then go rook h5 with tempo. Except on e5, the rook is safe. On g5, the rook is vulnerable. Interesting. It's winning anyway, but we want to be accurate. And then, yeah, rook h5, knight back to f8. The engine suggests rook h4 because black literally can't move. I mean, you can literally just go queen d7. That's all you can do. And then I can do whatever I want. I even saw this idea of g5 and just going for it. And the engine suggests knight g8. Because there's nothing to do. Other than that, you just shuffle. And then I push. And if this knight takes, then I take. And if this knight takes, you get mated. And if you don't take, then you get mated. In many different ways. So, I thought rook e6 was the easiest win, though. And it is the best move. Queen d7 allows rook e to h6, and there's forced mate. There's no way you can stop mate. Interestingly, the engine... Oh, it was calling queen d7 inaccurate because of knight g8, but obviously this is still completely winning. I don't think we'd have an issue winning this position. So, yeah, my opponent goes knight g8, rook h7, knight h7, and rook h7. I mean, the queen is also hanging. I could take the queen, but obviously mate is better. And yeah, that was a really interesting game. And hopefully I can encourage some of you to try the Monte Carlo for yourselves. It isn't that easy of an opening from what I have played so far. if you have any recommendations of videos that I can watch to learn more about the Monte Carlo, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm enjoying the system, but I feel like I'm lacking knowledge at the moment. But it does resemble the Panov attack against the Caro-Kann in many ways, so I'm trying to apply similar sort of concepts. On that note, if you want to see a very interesting game in the Panov attack against the Caro-Kann, which again, the Monte Carlo is relatively similar to, check out the video up here. And if you want to see the previous episodes of this climb to 2200, then check out the playlist down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.